Hello ladies and gents, trickery time, my favorite opening tricks. I'm going to here introduce you to 5 of the very many opening tricks that I really like. There's a bit of a trend in various YouTube and stream platforms now about opening traps, and I also thought that would jump on this bandwagon. However, like with many things, my take on this matter is a little bit different. In that I don't really like to promote tricks that are based on unsound play. I don't really like tricks that are based on you playing a move and then saying the Hail Mary and the Al Fada, hoping that our opponent will fall into it instead of actually beating us. So the way I really like opening tricks is when they are actually embedded in correct play. And so if it works, then it's good. If it doesn't, then we still have a meaningful game ahead of us. In that spirit, without further ado, let's jump into the Sozin Attack. One of the favorite variations, most favorite variations of Beth Harmon, actually. She played it in various episodes of the Queen's Gambit. And this is a variation that I worked on myself a lot. After b5, the castles is the main variation, but bishop g5 is a very fascinating main line. And actually, I worked on this line against the very early knight d7 as well, obviously, because after b5 there is a potential for them to transpose. And this line, although may not be best, but has a very unique character, and it's basically an absolute minefield for black to walk on. And if they succeed, then the position is actually pretty playable for black, but it's a really fascinating stuff to get into, and I really do think that it's worth investigating the hidden potentials of this variation. b5, for example, being one of the most popular moves here, actually allows white to attempt a very exciting piece sacrifice that leads to really awesome attacking positions. And if black missteps here and plays queen b6, then we have got something awesome up our sleeve. I actually lost a number of games after queen b6 as white because I forgot my own analysis, played knight d5 takes pawn takes, and I failed to deliver the deadly blow on the e-file, and I lost the games. And I went like, I remember that queen b6 was winning. So I looked up my file, and then I went like, oh, of course, you doozy. After knight d5, queen d5 is the move. Very unusual, which is why I missed it, by the way. Because almost always we take back with the e-pawn and then attack on the e-file. But here, there is an amazing motif at play that actually immediately renders this position to totally winning for white, because unless black gives up the rook, he loses to this beautiful mate. Takes, check, and mate. I won about 5 blitz games at least with this trick. And once again, I need to emphasize that black is in really serious trouble here, because even if they don't play bishop b7 but move the rook, knight c7 is still on. So they really need to address this problem by a move that stops queen e6 check, something like knight e5, for example, when I just get to take a free rook and the game is over. So that trick has earned me a really large number of games that I won very easily as a result of knowing about this bishop e6 trick. And once again, this is not playing for tricks, because if they don't play b5 but play the correct knight c5, then opening theory still continues. So this is how I like opening tricks, when they are based on sound play. On that note, my second favorite is against the Scandi. In the Scandi, there is a line which is actually quite popular: d4, knight f6, knight f3, and c6. And this is one of the variations, one of the very few, where I actually prefer to castle kingside with white. I usually go queenside like anyone should in these pawn structures. I will make a separate video about that. And so the trickery here is that after bishop d2, bishop f5, we go knight e4, hitting queen, hitting knight, but that's not what the trap is going to be about. We take this, and usually the more adventurous and enterprising players here actually take back with the g, having in their mind that they are going to castle queenside and want to use this g file to attack the king. And here one of white's best setup is based on fianchettoing the bishop, and then castling here. And if black castles there, then we've got c4, queen a4, and a very rapid attack on the queen side, combined with bishop f4, white is way better there. And so black figured that maybe it would be a good idea in this position to play bishop e4 to solidify this bishop here, or if the knight moves then trade it off, thus weakening the king and strengthening the attack on the king side for black. This, however, is a losing blunder. And it's a beautiful one, man. Well, actually, this is not yet losing. After rook e1, f5 is, which is basically the way how this goes. And so, thank you. Cheers. And so what happens here, excuse my eating, is that after knight g5, bishop takes g2, we swallow the food, and we pull the trigger. Make sure that you do it in this order. And that rook e6, boy, is a trick that caught several grandmasters. Yep, you heard that right, GMs fell for this. And again, the best part of it is that we are building a sound position, and along the way, we just pave the way for a trick for black to fall into. And if they don't, that's fine. We're still playing a totally sound, awesome game. But bishop e4 was already setting black on the wrong path, and after f5, knight g5, the absolute best for black is when they get away with a pawn down. But after takes, rook takes, it's just carnage. Pawn takes, queen h5 check. And if the king goes here, it gets mated. Yeah, and if the king goes... Actually, the only way to avoid getting mated is to go here, and after knight check to go here. And then takes. Because if they go, for example, king up, then check here, and then this is mate. And thus, we arrived at the second trick. Once again, this is against the Scandi. I will show you again. So we apply... This is all opening theory all the way up to here, and this is where black can go wrong if they choose to play bishop e4. And this is such an unassuming position, like you wouldn't think that this could be a blunder here to trade off this bishop, but a king stuck in the middle is always a potential victim of violence. And now we arrive at the most unique case of this video, because now I'm going to show you something that is utterly unsound, but as a direct result of that, the best story in the whole video. It's many years ago. I was playing on a different server where I used to play a lot of backhouse or transfer chess, whatever, and occasionally I would play blitz on that side too. And I came across a dude, he was about 2200 rated, so quite highly rated, who played a Dutch. And I'm like, you know what? I know a cool trick against the Dutch. I will try it. So I played h3. He goes knight f6. I go g4. He takes. I take back. He takes. I play queen d3. And now he sees that it's actually quite unpleasant, because rook takes h7 hangs that h7 pawn. I mean, think about how often you lose a h7 pawn as black in any opening on move 5 or 6 rather. And so he goes like, oh, that's not good. I need to defend it. And then, whoopsie daisies! You didn't really defend that, did you? Because now comes the mate in case of either piece takes on h7, which means that in order to prevent the mate, by whatever means, black has to surrender the rook. Now that is a sweet trick, but this is a really garbage play by white. After h3, knight f6, d5, g4, if they play d5, black is already way better. And that needs to be said. Like, none of my previous two had this problem that we play for a trick and then they don't fall for it, they play a move, and then we go like, oh, okay, well, then now we are clearly worse. So this is why I am against playing for tricks. But boy, I couldn't resist the temptation. Better still, I went really cheeky, because then we played a rematch. I was black, don't even remember what happened. And then white again. I go d4, f5, h3. He goes knight f6. I'm like, okay, g4. He takes. And I think taking actually, it still may be fine, but taking g4 I think is iffy. I play queen d3 and he goes g6. I'm like, right, if I take now, he takes back, I go queen g6, the rook can block. And although I can pick off the knight, but that's not quite what I'm after. So I'm like, okay, let's see where this goes. I will play this. He played knight f6 again. And now rook takes h7 still wins for me, because if rook takes, which he did do, check, rook f7, knight e5. and queen f7 mate is unstoppable. He disconnected here. Quite understandably, I would say. So yeah, that's the one and only that I have for you. That is based on very dodgy and unsound play, but boy, the laugh I got out of it, not at the expense of my opponent, but the whole story, the way how it unfolded was just quite silly. Anyway, let's move on to the black side. I have got 2 tricks for you to show in the Tromp. So number 4 is actually a theoretical, well, not a theoretical line, it's a line that I wasn't aware of. So essentially I invented it for myself, for all intents and purposes. Of course, this trick was played before me multiple times, but I really thought that it was quite clever, and I've never seen it anywhere before. So when I first had this position, hang on a second, sorry, f3 first, knight back d5, I actually figured it out myself that knight h5 here has got a bit of a venom to it, and is not necessarily compromising the position even if white plays best. So here the bishop needs to go, and if they come here, I quite like this acceleration of my development, which then means bishop g7, d6, and I quite comfortably finish something that looks like a Benoni structure after d6. And so usually they either drop back to d2 or c1. And here comes the trickery. I play e6 once again, faking a Benoni type of setup after c4, take, d6, e4. This is what white would expect, that's what e6 is about. And more often than not, they would absolutely forget about the fact that, in fact, this move is purely about this trick. Ouchie. King d2, knight g3, and we win the exchange and the game. Now, admittedly, I recently figured out that e6 is actually a far more accurate move here than e5 is, and I mostly played it with e5. Now, because of, I would like to live up to the expectations that I set to myself, I'm no longer going to do this, because it turns out that after e5, knight h3, this structure, which I thought was pretty good for black, is actually not. So I always entered some kind of King's Indian setup like this, but the engine proves it very quickly that it's suboptimal for black. But the benefit of e5 was that now c4 or even e4 is even more logical than against e6. So now a lot of games followed e4. Because, for example, after e6, it's less likely they fall for it because c4 check actually blunders the pawn too. So even if they don't notice this trickery, they are not going to fall for it because they see that. But yeah, with e5, I won about 10 games that were based on this trick of check. King went somewhere, knight g3, take, thank you very much. And they tried to trap the queen, but it's not possible. Like easy d6 trade, and it just comes out either this way or this way. There is no way to trap the queen in there because white's development is also kilometers behind. And this takes us to the very, very last trick, which I have never played in my life, but I really like it, and it's actually the same line in the Tromp. But once again, Grandmaster games followed this path. Same story, c5, c3, queen b6, queen b3, c takes d4, and this is where the trickery begins. Queen takes, pawn takes. Now we see that there is already an open path for the rook here, which usually is actually sufficient compensation for the damaged pawn structure. But here white has done something very, very weird by taking this. Now, develop piece for an undeveloped knight, it looks really, really questionable. I suppose the reason why they did it is because they didn't like the look of he here attacking too many things at once. But unfortunately, bishop takes b8 here is a tragic blunder. And of course, white did look at the possibility of black not taking it, but taking here first. But they thought that then the bishop goes back to e5, covering everything there. Not the case. Check this out. Takes, bishop e5, and here comes the thunderbolt, rook takes a2, and white has nothing left but to resign, because after rook takes a2, pawn c2, no matter what white does, black is going to have a queen next. In fact, I've got two mate in one threats. So allowing the queen is the smaller problem. The bigger one is to stop the mate. a really cool, cute little trick that is actually quite easy to fall into. And once again, all the moves by black were correct. And in fact, none of them were playing directly for the trick per se. We just allowed an opportunity here for white to go wrong in a position that was otherwise fully sound for black. So, after bishop takes b8, once again, here comes the beauty. We take c3. Obviously, they can take back here, and after the trade, black is a pawn up and has quite good winning chances. But of course, bishop e5, rook a2 is the name of the game, finishing this game beautifully. And with that, my video 2 about my top 5, or at least 5 of my favorite opening tricks. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I do hope that some of these tricks will come handy in your games. I would really appreciate if you let me know if you managed to score a victory or two with any of these, or alternatively, if you have got your favorite, please comment below. Thanks for watching. Bye.